This is Capital Insider, taking you inside politics, policy, and government in Oklahoma. I'm Dick Pryor with Quorum Call publisher Sean Ashley. Our guest is Michael Crespin, director and curator of the Carl Albert Congressional Research and Studies Center and professor of political science at the University of Oklahoma. Welcome back to Capital Insider.
Thanks for having me again.
Michael, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen an assassination attempt directed at a former president and presidential candidate, a sitting president drop out of his re-election campaign, and a vice president rapidly ascending to be the nominee designate of that president's party. It's been a whirlwind. Historically speaking, have we ever seen anything like this before?
I think all these events happening in what is essentially a month is unprecedented. So we have seen assassination attempts on candidates before. We've had incumbent presidential looking like to be the nominees drop out before, thinking about LBJ, and actually there's Truman, and maybe some others historically has happened, but not all of this happening in such a short timeline.
In 1968, President Lyndon Johnson dropped out of the race in March. Bobby Kennedy got in the race and then was assassinated, and the Democratic Party had one of history's most contentious political conventions in Chicago. Those circumstances seem eerily like this year. Michael, do you see the national political environment now being similar or different than in that tumultuous year, 1968?
I think in some ways it's similar. It looked like there were disagreements in the Democratic Party about who the nominee should be, although now the party has come together. We don't see, I don't think, amongst the general public, political violence perhaps that we saw in 1968. Now, of course, we do see the violence with the assassination attempt on former President Trump. So some of the elements I think are certainly there. I would say I think the parties have learned from the history. So the Democratic Party very quickly coalesced around Vice President Harris as potentially to be the new nominee. And then the Republicans during the convention were also very united in ways that perhaps we haven't seen that previously.
In this country, we tend to have perpetual campaigns, but that's not the case in some countries where elections can be called and held within a few months. What challenges will Vice President Harris and former President Trump face in the 100-day sprint to the general election?
Sure, yeah. Other countries, England or the UK might have a six-week election and it's considered a long election. I worked on one as a college student and everyone thought it was really long. So what do the parties have to do or the candidates have to do? I think Vice President Harris will have to get a campaign together, a team. Now, she's going to take a lot of President Biden's team and probably stick with them. It's probably too late to start over. Now, actually, I think that the head of Biden's campaign had worked for Harris previously. So I think there is a connection there. Both candidates will have to raise money. The Democrats raised, I think, over $100 million in about a 24-hour period. The money will be there. It always comes in. Now, I think the Republicans and former President Trump has to now switch gears and, define Vice President Harris, right? Their whole campaign was set off against Biden, and now they're going to have to change and, maybe find some new angles of attack.
Both parties have framed this election as one to define the future of the United States. It also could have a significant down-ballot effect on who controls Congress and ultimately the direction of the Supreme Court. Every election matters, but do you see this one truly being that monumental?
I think the balance of the Supreme Court could potentially be the most important and long-lasting of this election. So if President Trump is to win and the Republicans gain control of the Senate, which looks likely, I think, no matter who wins the presidency, he might be able to appoint additional people to the bench and then get them confirmed. If Harris wins the election, might also be able to make nominees. I think it would be difficult for the Republicans to not approve a choice. Now, they could have more say in a choice. They could say no and have Harris come back with another one. But the balance of the court, not the balance, but having additional Republican nominees could swing the balance even more in favor of conservatives.
We know Republicans will hold the majority in the state legislature after this year's elections. But could these recent events influence the balance of power in Oklahoma?
I don't think it's going to influence Oklahoma all that much. Thinking about the state House and Senate, those are, I think, going to maintain control by the Republicans and probably maintain the supermajority. We had some interesting leadership elections where the incoming president pro tem of the Senate lost in a primary, although it looks like, there's a new winner there. I don't see big changes in Oklahoma for 2024.
Michael Crespin, Director and Curator of the Carl Albert Congressional Research and Studies Center and Professor of Political Science at the University of Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that's Capitol Insider. Until next time, with Sean Ashley, I'm Dick Pryor.
Here at Shortwave Space Camp, we escape our everyday lives to explore the mysteries and quirks of the universe. We find weird, fun, interesting stories that explain how the cosmos is partying all around us. From stars to dwarf planets to black holes and beyond, we've got you. Listen now to the Shortwave podcast from NPR.